Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Media Boat Podcast, your weekly rundown where we talk about movies, TV, music, and video games, not necessarily in that order. My name is Mike, and his name is Matt.
My name is Matt. His name is Mike. We got the names right this week. Look at
Yes.
us. We're like professionals or something. We've definitely been doing this for 9 years. This is the Media Boat Podcast. It is February the 20th, 2025. Hopefully my levels aren't too loud. I keep going back and forth with my
With your
gain
gains.
because like 2 weeks ago I was too quiet. Last week I was too loud again. And so this week, I don't know. Hopefully I'm okay. I'll find out when I do the clips. Anyway, so yeah, this is episode 475, and we have a lot to get into. So let's
Yeah,
just get straight into it.
we got a couple thoughts at the very end of this, but
Yeah.
before we get there, we got to start with the music section. Start the music section with the Billboard. Start the Billboard with the Hot 100. And the Hot 100 is heating up because Kendrick Lamar got that Super Bowl bump. Well,
Yes.
did he? But yes, kind
I
of.
mean,
At,
yes, that's what that was.
at number one is Not Like Us. At two, Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA. At three, TV Off by Kendrick Lamar featuring Lefty Gunplay. At four, Die with a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, giving you a brief Kendrick break before he comes back at number five with Squabble Up by Kendrick Lamar.
Yep. What did people do right after they were done with the halftime show? They listened to a bunch of Kendrick.
Probably at half speed so they can understand it this time.
Wow.
All that new audience that he brought in, which is why he got all
Yeah.
those extra minutes and extra plays.
Yep.
As for your albums chart, your Billboard 200, at number one is, of course, GNX by Kendrick Lamar.
Makes sense. It's the album where all these songs are on.
Yes, and then
Well,
at number
except for
two
Not Like
is
Us.
SOS by SZA. Makes sense. Which does mean at three is Hurry Up Tomorrow by The Weeknd. Dropping to four, Debbie Tirar Más Fotos by Bad Bunny. And rounding up your top five, or should I say, rising up to the top five, is The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess by Chapel Roan.
Yeah, all this makes sense. The Kendrick at number one is the Super Bowl. Like I mentioned last week, SOS got more bonus tracks, so that's why SOS is still here. And yeah, that just moves the weekend down a spot.
If you didn't like any of those albums, we have new releases, starting with Gut, singular, no S, by Bats. The Machine Starts to Sing, EP by Porridge Radio. Watching People. I'm sorry, that's not watching people. Reverse it. That's People Watching by Sam Fender. Anti Bloom by Silverstein. So Close to What by Tate McRae. Oh, The Ocean by The Wombats. And lastly, Rarely Do I Dream by Youth Lagoon. I hope
Yep.
all those emphases are correct, and if they're not, I'm sure I made them even more better than they were. All right, with that out of the way, let's go into the music news, where we have an update from a couple weeks ago with Fire Aid. Well, of the approximately $100 million that was raised by the All Star Fire Aid concert and webcast on January 30th, about half of that amount, so roughly $50 million,
Mhm.
has now been earmarked for distribution to fire relief organizations and other charities. The fire aid organizers announced on Tuesday. The announcement from the Azov company, who had booked and produced the event, and Intuit Dome and Kia Forum, the ones who hosted the events, said that, quote, this initial phase of gifting priorities uh, com- of gifting prioritizes community-based organizations that are on the front lines of wildfire relief. The selected organizations have the infrastructure, experience, and relationships necessary to efficiently and equitably deliver assistance to fire impacted individuals and have each received $100,000 or more. Close
Yeah,
quote.
so this is good news. This is Fire Aid delivering on the promise that they said that created the whole idea behind Fire Aid. I also listened to an NPR report about this, and they kind of went into more detail about exactly what the schedule of it is and also the thought process behind it. They figured it makes sense that the first step should be if there are already in like existing mechanisms for delivering aid, let's donate to them first. So that's why this $50 million has been distributed in this way, because let's get it to the people who need it right now and figure that part out. Then the second half of the money will be distributed later, and that will be more about the rebuild. That will be more about the effort to get things back to normalcy after the initial need is provided. So it's kind of like a delayed release strategy, and it makes sense considering where we're at with the recovery effort. So yeah,
See, we don't like the term delayed release. Instead, we prefer the term waterfall release as it comes
sure,
down
sure.
step by step by step. A
Is that what your
tiered
boss says?
release. Huh?
Is
Yes,
that
a
what your
tier.
boss says?
Yes, it is a tiered process.
You just went into work mode on me. I don't think I've seen work Mike on the podcast before.
Oh, I always show up when it's a business.
It's true. That's yeah. We'll get to some businesses later.
Oh yeah, we'll get
Uh,
there later, especially
business
at the
business.
end. Oh boy.
Yeah, some businesses businessing this week for sure.
Yes.
But
But yeah,
yeah,
no, this is
the good
definitely
news.
good news.
Yeah,
So of the so it's $100,000, which means 500 different I don't tell them all charities, but it's different
right.
500 different aid reliefs were given
Yeah,
roughly $100 million or $100,000
hundred
or
thousand
more.
dollars. And when you consider 500 different organizations, that means these organizations probably range from the very small to the larger ones, which means that $100,000 for a small organization is probably a lifesaver in a lot of ways. These smaller aid organizations are probably just loving the gift here and being able to operate at full speed for the people who need it.
Right. And like you said, these are people who need the aid now. People who lost their
Yeah,
homes, who have no home to go to, who need to figure out what to do in the next day, the next week, the next month, before we get to the other half of that $100 million, which is how to rebuild a home on a plot that's basically been burnt.
right.
Lots of infrastructure to go into, lots of still to be done, as what happens with fires and
Yes.
fire destruction. So not out of the maybe bad phrasing, out of the woodwork just yet, but
Sure.
still a lot that needs to be done to get back to normalcy.
Yep.
All right. Did you listen to anything?
Not really. I will say no, we'll keep that for TV. I was gonna say I don't know if we want to separate the SNL 50 concert from the SNL
Yeah,
50
let's
special.
let's separate that. Yeah, I forgot to put that down here, but I think you did. Yeah, SNL 50.
Yeah, I watched that. Uh, yeah. A lot of acts that you wouldn't think that would be on the same stage were on the same stage. It was kind of funny that this followed something like Fire Aid because I got similar vibes where I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this is a very wide variety of different people that we're getting in this thing. And it was just so rapid fire, and they tried to put sketches in it too, and that maybe worked half the time. Um, yeah, it was pretty weird. Just a weird vibe, but yeah, there were some pretty decent performances on there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about SNL 50 when we get to the TV section, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, just real briefly, the SNL doc on the musical guests,
Yes.
way more in depth than I thought it was ever going to be.
Yeah, no, that was a good watch. I watched that a handful of weeks ago when that came out, and yeah, that's pretty well done. I mean, Questlove knows how to make music documentaries. He's won
Yes.
the Oscar for one. So yeah, it's an impressive thing. I probably liked that more than I liked the actual 50th concert. Yeah, you're right. It goes into in depth in a lot of subjects that you think they wouldn't touch, which was interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe I don't know if he has an Emmy for it, but I'm sure this will get him one. But yeah, we'll talk more about SL50 when we get to TV section.
Yep.
But first, we got to get through the video game section, and we start with new releases, including Like a Dragon: colon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. That's wide release. Everything you got it, you can play it, unless you're on the Switch. We also have PGA Tour 2K25 for the PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. None of that Live Tour bullshit here. This is straight up PGA.
Yes, this is the real thing, not the off-brand.
Yes. We also have The Backrooms 1998 for everything. Wide release. You got it. You can play it. I believe this is in conjunction with the Backrooms YouTube series, correct?
Oh, I have no idea. I can't tell you.
I'm pretty sure it is. There's also Cabernet for wide release. You got it. You can play it. And lastly, Ninja 5.0 for the PC, PS5, PS4, and the Switch.
Yep.
Uh, let's get into some video game news.
Real quick, I want to put an asterisk on this story. A while back, I had said that wanted to try to avoid reporting on generative AI stories on the podcast
Mhm.
because most of the time they were grifts, and most of the time it just seemed like a waste of our breath to talk about it. I made an exception for this story because video games, well, is a pretty small world compared to a lot of other media. There are pretty much the big players, and then there's everybody else. And unfortunately, if a big player is involved in something, I feel like we should probably talk about it. But just know my feelings about the story is that I think what's actually being discussed here is ultimately not going to matter. But this week, it was the big news story in video games. So I guess we'll talk about it.
Because we're talking about Microsoft,
Yes.
and they have debuted a generative AI model that it says can generate, quote, game visuals, controller actions, or both, close quote. This generative AI model, which AI has named Muse, no relation to the band, was developed by Microsoft's game intelligence team in collaboration with Ninja Theory. It will be made open source to help other researchers explore these models and build on their work, Microsoft said. On Wednesday, Microsoft published several videos showing what gameplay sequences generated by Muse could look like. The company said these examples were generated by prompting the model with 10 initial frames, or roughly 1 second, of human gameplay and the controller actions of the whole play sequence. Xbox's Phil Spencer later said he believes Muse could be used to help preserve classic games in the future. Quote, you could imagine a world where, from gameplay data and video, a model could learn games and really make them portable to any platform run. I think that's really exciting. Close quote, he said.
Yeah, I bet you do, Phil. I bet you do find that really exciting. Unless the model in question is Tyra Banks, a living person. I don't want any model making games for me. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's talk about what this thing actually is. So yeah, like a learned language model, like she had Chat GPT. Basically,
Mhm.
that works by it studies like a bunch of material, written material in the case of Chat GPT, and then it spits out things based on the knowledge that it's learned of the language that it studied. So basically, what Muse is doing is instead of words, it is processing the visuals of the gameplay that's happening in that second of gameplay, and also the button inputs. And basically, what that spits out is a video like demo, basically of, hey, this is kind of like what you said you wanted in your prompt based on what I've been able to glean from the data that I've studied. So let's use Ninja Theory's games as an example, as Microsoft does in these videos. They take a Ninja Theory game that involves like, like hacking and slashing gameplay, right? Like, so 1 second of hack and slash. So probably XBB is probably the controller input if you're doing like a combo or something. And then you say, hey, Muse, I want a game where you're an action figure, you're like a toy action figure beating up on another action figure in a sandbox. And then supposedly it would spit out a video of that happening with that gameplay interpreted by what it's studied. So, are these ideas? Not really, because if they're taking from existing video games, you're only going to get iterations of the same video games that have already existed, right? You're not going to get a new original game idea. That requires a human brain to do. Uh, People like game developers are coming up with original gameplay ideas all the time. Like, this cannot do something that they can't do. And then on top of that, is it providing possibly a baseline for developers to start? Is this, for example, oh, well, we were going to make a game about two action figures fighting in the first place. Let's pop it in a Muse and have this as a starting place to help us come up with ideas. So that's also a moot point. I'm not a developer, but what I've been listening to people talk about in the last couple of days is that there's already versions of this that were made by people. There are already tools that developers use. The famous example being Mark Cerny, the architect of the PS4 and PS5, and also the developer of Marble Madness, a classic. He developed a long ass time ago, basically a version of this without any AI. That was basically like, here's like a template that you can base video game ideas upon. Here's an existing like framework. So that already exists. So really, what Xbox and Phil Spencer are talking about here is something that they poured a whole lot of money into, a whole lot of man hours trying to think of how to do this. Clearly, probably a very expensive contract with Ninja Theory. Like all of this to spit out something that game developers already have and don't need. That's Mutants.
Ah, but that's where you're wrong. This is not for game developers. This is not for people in the business. This is open source. This is for anyone who wants to get their hands on it.
Yeah, but no one needs that. Like, because even if you, okay, I'm going to sideline a little bit because this conversation is kind of wide ranging and
Mhm.
talk about AI in a wider sense just for a second. So this week, everybody's favorite billionaire, Mark Cuban, decided to pop the bubble of relatability for a second and I guess tweeted. It looked like a tweet. I'm guessing it was on X. I don't know if it was on Blue Sky. I don't think he's on there. Basically, hey, I think that the future is if you're not educated and you want a job in the tech industry, go learn AI tools. And if you do that, you're going to have a leg up on people who are educated and refuse to use them. This is according to Mark Cuban. These are not my words. I want to make that very clear.
Mhm.
But that's based on an existence that does not exist. That's based on a reality that isn't real, right? He's basically saying, like, without specifics, that you can come in knowing nothing about the thing that you want to be an expert in and pop it into a learned language model or some other AI equivalent and somehow produce work that's better than somebody who says has a master's degree in like engineering or something. That's what these tech guys think. And that's the thinking that's powering this idea too. This open source idea that you're referencing, and like the idea that anybody can say, hey, I don't know anything about game development, but I want to make a game. I really do. I'm going to put my idea into Muse and it's going to pop out a video game on the other hand, on the other side of this. Well, one, that's not how Muse works. And two,
Mhm.
that's not That's not true. It creates something that kind of is like looks like a game idea, but it's not a game idea. There's no extra steps there. There's no end game for that person who wants to make games because besides a thing that a grainy video that's obviously grainy because they can't actually like produce the stuff at high quality yet. Like that means nothing to anybody.
To me, it sounds like a pitch machine. I want my character to do XYZ with button inputs because it's not actual, or at least from what I'm being read, it sounded like it's not actual gameplay that's being provided. It's a gameplay footage.
It's like a mock-up. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like a mock-up of the video game in play. But if it's pitching, if you really think this is for pitching, who's going to take these pitches? Because it's all the market already is set up to basically exclude anybody who's not a AAA developer already or has worked on AAA games on their resume. And even then, that's not guaranteed that they're going to get a pitch through the door. What industry are these tech people imagining? It's one that doesn't exist. There's not like some sort of mythical Shark Tank-esque like throw ideas at the wall room where somebody who can just with a muse and a dream can just walk into a boardroom and be like, here's my video game idea. That's not how it works anymore. It may have never worked that way. I just don't understand a use case for this in any sector of the industry.
Its use is proving to Microsoft that they didn't waste $100 million buying OpenAI, or yeah, I think it's
Yes.
OpenAI.
Yeah, I think that's what they did. Yeah, no, you're right. Ultimately, it's a vanity project. It's a vanity project for Phil Spencer to get the board members who are like breathing down his neck about AI off his back. It's Microsoft saying, "Yeah, we're using this in every aspect of our company. Copilot this, Copilot that, Muse for Xbox." It's just buzzwords. It's just VC capital, like corrupting every piece of the tech puzzle. It's kind of embarrassing because you have Phil Spencer who keeps trying to seem like he's everybody's video game big brother and the nice dude running the nicest exec to run a video game company. But he keeps stepping on his own feet over and over and over again by doing stuff like this. No one's going to believe him the next time, except they will because it keeps happening over and over and over again. He keeps doing shit like this, and everybody has the mind, like the memory of a goldfish, and forgets that no, he is just as susceptible to these tech bro like grifts as any tech exec is.
Except
But anyway,
he's in charge of all, well, not all, but a huge sum of money behind and Xbox to do it.
yeah, and that's ultimately why we're talking about it right now is because it's such a big thing, like a big thing from a big company. And it doesn't, it exists in a plane of reality that doesn't actually exist.
Ah, well, at least we're talking about this, and we'll have something better to talk about next week. Because next week is Pokemon Day.
Yes, that's the other little bit of news is that yes, the Pokemon Company confirmed that the 27th
Yes, next
of
Thursday.
February, next Thursday, a week from today, will be the annual Pokemon Day, Pokemon Presents stream. This is Legends ZA. This has to be Legends ZA. We have to know what that
Mhm.
thing is. We're going to see gameplay. We're going to hopefully have a release date. It's ZA.
It has to be.
Yeah.
As well as like the next expansion in probably the trading card game and trading card game pocket.
Yeah.
I don't see anything much more after that. There's rumors about them announcing the next animated film and maybe a
Yeah.
sequel to Detective Pikachu.
It's possible. That
Been long
project's
enough.
been yeah, it's been gestating for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they put out a trailer.
Hmm. Or a
Hmm.
teaser or something saying like just
Yeah,
it's
logo.
back. Here's a date.
Ryan Reynolds' voice behind a logo. I could see that.
No, it's just Ron Reynolds with Pikachu saying, "Did you miss me?" And
Yeah,
then
something like that.
cut to a date, and
Yeah.
there you go, Detective Pikachu. There.
Done.
Done. Trailer. 10 seconds. Hyped. Check-ins in the mail.
I was just gonna say, like, where's our check? We just figured this out for you. Yeah, no, I'm very fascinated with what ZA is. Just the pitch alone that it takes entirely in Lumio City and Kalos. It's like, what does that mean?
hmm
Are there battles at all? Like, what is this game?
There's also
But
that secret Sinnoh project that we don't know anything about.
yeah, we'll see if that's real. Remember, the thing about those leaks is that a lot of stuff was not actually attached to real projects.
hmm
So I have my doubts. But yeah, ZA definitely, and yeah, like you said, probably a TCG Pocket expansion, maybe news about Detective Pikachu 2. Yeah,
Yeah.
I expect that.
Yep. Just all road. Get your bingo cards ready with that information.
Yes.
All right. Let's see here. You played a game, and I almost played a game.
Okay. You want to
So
tell me what you almost played real quick before I jump in?
I almost played, what is the name here? The Lost Records game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's on PlayStation Extra, isn't it?
Yes, Bloom and Rage. I found that out today. That's on PlayStation Extra. So
Yeah.
let's download it. It's ready for me to play after this podcast.
Cool.
But that means we can't talk about it this week. But
Yeah.
you did set up something last week that we were going to talk about right now, which is
Yes.
Avowed.
So Avowed. Real quick disclaimer. I know I just talked a whole lot of shit on Microsoft. However, this happens to be an Xbox Game Studios published title. It is available day one on Game Pass. You know, this is the story of this podcast. It's like we have to hold guys accountable, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't, talk about a thing they made and if it's good or not. And I'm happy to tell everybody, Avowed is good.
Oh,
Avowed is
thought it was going to go the
really
other way
good.
when you said that.
No, no, that's the thing. That's why I'm feeling a little mixed about this.
Mhm.
Um, Avowed is a very, very good game. I'm playing a lot of it. I was playing it mere hours before we started recording this podcast. I am way into this, and I can't imagine getting out until I finish it. That's like where I'm at with Avowed. As we talked about last week, Avowed is from Obsidian. Like we talked about, they did the Outer Worlds, and then prior to that, Fallout New Vegas, Pentiment. They're known for story-heavy games with very intricately designed worlds. And this is definitely one of them. In practice, Avowed is kind of like if you put Skyrim in shrink wrap, where like everything about Skyrim was just tightened up. A lot of the unnecessary friction was sanded away. And what you're left is a smaller adventure, but a smaller adventure that feels just as big and wondrous as something like Skyrim can. So it's a first person RPG, just like Skyrim. But again, smaller open world. So there's less overall to do, both story quests and side quests. But there still is an open world, and there still is a lot of exploration, a lot of resource gathering, a lot of quests to take on, a lot of different weapons to try out, and a lot of different kinds of approaches to gameplay and exploration. It is the kind of game that rewards you experimenting with the systems and evolving as you're leveling up your character in the way that you approach the game. The story is actually really cool so far, and I'm not that much into RPG stories typically, like Skyrim. You couldn't tell me if you asked me about anything about the Skyrim story, I don't know what I would tell you. But this, I have pretty much a grasp on what's going on. You're like a godlike envoy who is basically exploring and helping people with these like doing things that only you can really handle. At one point, you die, minor spoiler for the first like 30 minutes of the game. Um, and you come back to life because someone's out there in some sort of other universe needs you to stay alive. And so you're part of the mystery of the games. You're trying to figure out that. We're also while also trying to figure out how to get rid of this scourge, this like weird like environmental poison that is crapping up some of the environment in the world that you're in. But yeah, the characters are really well voiced and characterized. The writing is really good so far. The dialogue trees are really well done. there's a lot of like very minor things that you think are just like, oh, well, I'm going to play around in this conversation and try to move this person this way by saying something that's only tangentially related to the story at hand. And it follows you down that path. It's pretty good about interpreting the kind of character you want to play. Obsidian is very, very good at this. Also, if you're lost during a conversation, you're like, I don't remember what these words mean. They put in a system that's kind of like a live encyclopedia of terms that you can just press one button and it tells you, here's what this means. Here's where this was. This is what they're talking about. I guess this is a system that they introduced in Pentiment that they're refining here. And it's really cool and it works really well, especially for somebody like me who gets lost in that minutia sometimes.
It sounds like
And
something that
then
was introduced in Final Fantasy 16 recently.
similar, it's similar to that system in some ways. Um, but the good news here is that the weakest part of those Bethesda games, Obsidian has taken that and made it one of its biggest assets, the combat. Like before, it's kind of was like, especially in Skyrim, somewhat in Fallout, it felt like that shooting and or hitting people with swords was just kind of like a way to experience the world, and it never really felt great, at least especially to me, especially the melee combat in those games never especially connected. Avowed makes the combat fun. So that means moment to moment, you are having fun, just as much fun as you are exploring the story in the world. And that is, I think, the thing that's keeping me invested. The hand to hand stuff is actually good. It feels good in your hand. Like when you hit an enemy with a sword, it feels like you're connecting, which is something that Skyrim never really felt like. I'm a ranger because, of course, I am. So I'm using a lot of bow and arrow. And that's also feels good. It has a cool weakness thing where if you're zooming in, it shows a little diamond over the weak spot. So you know specifically where to aim. And it is a lifesaver. And it brings over I know I'm mentioning Skyrim a lot, but it is the easiest comparison to make. It brings over the slow down time during your shooting the arrow thing from that game as well. And it uses it really well here. And there's a variety of weapons too. It's not just swords and bows. You also have like two-handed weapons. You also have magic spells. From the jump, basically, you get the full like ice, fire, electricity, like spell stuff. It's like it doesn't make you wait like a lot of RPGs do to get those kind of powers. It's just like, no, here you go. If you need to burn something up, we'll give you a thing right away to burn something up if you need to. Um, and yeah, like there's so much that I haven't even gotten into yet. Like there's a system um for your companions, just like those other games. And the companions are fun. You can like set up camp and kind of get their take on whatever major story event just happened. There's of course weapon upgrading. There's all the things you'd expect in a much bigger version of this game that's here in the smaller package as well. And it just looks beautiful. It is so colorful. There's colors popping everywhere. It plays really well on my 4090. Let me tell you, I'm running at 120 frames and it's just smooth and it just looks amazing. And yeah, it's a cool game. And I'm hoping people don't kind of get maybe like scared or intimidated by it because it's not as big as you think. It's just big enough to keep you occupied for a few weeks, and it's going to be a fun few weeks.
See, you keep saying that that's not as big as Skyrim, where Skyrim you can sink hundreds of 100 hours into.
Yeah.
How much have you sunk into Avowed, and how much more do you think you have?
So far, I've spent probably between 10 and 12 hours. And I am basically only have explored maybe a fourth of the map, and that's being generous, probably. I'm probably not even a full fourth of the map yet.
Okay.
So I'm estimating this about one half of Skyrim. So like this is probably not going to be maybe 50 hours, but probably fewer. And of course, that depends on how many of the side quests you're doing. But if you mainline the story, which I do not recommend, by the way, there is not necessarily explicit level gating here, but there is a system that they let you know pretty quickly which quests are going to be hard with your current outfit, like your weapons and your armor. and you will have to keep that in mind. I had to do that today. I had to keep in like the next available quests were like 3 skulls, which indicates I needed a better weapon set. And so I had to go figure that out before I could go tackle them. So it's not really level gating, but it's kind of light level gating where it's like it tries to pace you and make sure you're doing a lot of the side content to get up to the power level that they expect you to be for the main content. So as much as you're going to want to like power through if you're that kind of gamer, maybe don't. But yeah.
All right. Um, Characters. Are they different classes? You're just the same character? This like envoy.
So it's a lighter version of what's in those big what's something in something like Skyrim. You basically are not really choosing a race, you're just choosing a class and you're choosing like a background for story purposes. Otherwise, the character creator is pretty flexible. You can kind of make them look what you want them to look, but it's not like there's like a whole like wide range of like species kinds of things you're choosing from. It's smaller set of options than something like Skyrim.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was excited when this game was announced. I'm glad you are having a lot of fun with it. I
Yeah.
may try and find my way to play it.
I
At
mean, if
least,
you have a spare $60, it's a fun game. And if you think that it's something that you could dig, like you have time to dig into, I would recommend it. Is there a PS5 version of this? I think there might be.
I'm not sure. I know where I can get an Xbox though. I am pretty much at the end of Infinity Nikki though, until the next update comes.
uh,
Which is why I downloaded the other game that I mentioned. But if you're having a lot of fun with this, and it sounds like you are, I may have to get myself a handle on this.
yeah, check it out. I would look at some gameplay of it, see if that's kind of if you jive with the things it does in combat and story and stuff.
Right. Now you also played Elden Ring, right?
Like maybe an hour. I'm not
Okay,
really an
so
expert on having played that game.
all right, but you were more into this than you were into Elden Ring.
Absolutely not a like yeah, very different play experience. I'm really enjoying this. Elden Ring, I didn't know where the hell I was going, and every combat encounter seemed impossible. This is not that.
All right. Um, so like coming from like a zero gameplay experience, you could eh, have more fun with it then.
Yeah, seems like it.
All right. Well, that's Avowed.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm gonna try and take a look at it, but early top five. I mean,
Maybe.
we're
Yeah,
only
I
in
mean,
February.
February wise, yes. Like I can say probably my favorite game of the year so far, 2 months in
All right. Well, let's cut the off that clip. Favorite game of the year so far.
so far.
All right. Well then, let's. I said what I was playing, so let's go into television, where we start over with the
Yes.
sports corner.
Sports Corner.
Sports corner, and Daytona happened this past weekend and ended in a firing, blazing crash of glory in
Oh.
overtime. And it was such a fiery, blazing crash of glory that Austin Cindric was leading in the final lap before he got crashed out, leading William Byron to win the Daytona 500.
But he looked so cute in that picture you sent me.
Oh, I know, it's so awesome.
I don't know
But
why
just
they let a Cyndaquil drive a NASCAR, but that's just I don't
it's because he's on fire.
know.
But yeah, he was leading going into the final lap. He led most of the race and proving why he's my current favorite driver in NASCAR.
That would do it.
And right as coming towards the end, just someone in the back decided, nope, I'm not going to win. I'm getting boxed in. Let's cause chaos, and ended up hitting Mr. Cindric as he uh, just couldn't quite get over the line, leading Byron to zoom right by and take the checkered flag. Well,
Wow.
not the real checkered flag, it was a yellow flag, but because he was in the lead in overtime on the final lap, they technically award him. Otherwise, we have to do this all over again. And he's like 500 overtimes doing it that way. So, William Byron, you get the win, but you don't get the glory.
Yep.
Let's see here. Also, speaking of wins, all wins and no glory. The NBA had its All-Star game this past weekend. Steph Curry won his second All-Star MVP award. He is now the back-to-back Kobe Bryant MVP award winner, the only person to win the Kobe Bryant MVP award since they renamed it.
Right.
And since they did a little tournament instead of East versus West, Team Shaq's OGs won the All-Star tournament because they were shooting threes and hit the 40 points faster. And then there's also some things with Kevin Hart just absolutely blasting the players while they were there, and no one was having fun of it. I was like, yeah, yes, shame Kevin Hart in front public. Please continue to do so.
Please do. Please change him.
In the other All-Star game weekend, NHL will conclude tonight as of this recording with the USA versus Canada in the championship game of the Four Nations face-off. If you're watching the first time they played, you would have seen 3 fights in 9 minutes. And so many fisticuffs are expected in this championship game as well. Uh, because what's better than a geopolitical climate that's heating up on ice, where you have knives strapped to your feet and punching the opponent is acceptable.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's gonna blow up fast. That's exactly what it did.
I hope so. I hope it does it again. I'm looking forward to it. If anything, at least gets people more interested to watch than otherwise would be, which is more than I could say about
I guess
the
so.
NBA All-Star game.
Yes.
In other professional sports, MLB spring training began today, and your defending World Series champions, Los Angeles Dodgers, have come out swinging and whiffing as they lost to the Chicago Cubs 12-4 in an absolute trouncing in Cactus League's returning, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Important to remember here, if you don't watch baseball, spring training scores don't matter. It's basically an excuse for practice. It's basically an excuse for these batters to get out and swing at real balls, pitchers to actually pitch to batters. People do some live fielding that without doing it just against their own team. Like it, don't actually take to heart too much the performance of your favorite teams here. Like it's really this is an elaborate form of an exhibition game.
Yes.
What I will say though is that this go on.
I'll say, yeah, this is it's training league. This is
Yeah.
for the professional players to shake off the off-season rust, and for new players and specifically all the rookies coming in to gain some of that free MLB experience.
Yeah, and hopefully get his place on the roster, which is another
Yes.
big thing for those some of those on the bubble players.
Yep. That's what everyone's trying to do is make that. Oh, it's not a 52-man roster.
No, it's 40.
It's 40-man roster.
The
Yes.
40 man. Though there's one nice extra bonus for this spring training. There's an experiment happening, and it's happening with balls and strikes. So anybody who was paying attention to the minor leagues last season already knows about the ASB, I believe is what it's called, which is automated strikes at balls. And basically what that is, it's that rumored robo ump that was talk of the town over the last few years, except in a modified form. So basically, what it is a camera that is tracking balls and strikes as they cross home plate, specifically the middle of home plate. That's important. I'll get back to that in a second. But basically, instead of that being the all end all be all arbiter of balls and strikes calls, instead, what they're trying here in spring training is a challenge system for balls and strikes. The camera is always running, but it is up to the players, specifically the pitcher, the batter, or the catcher, to call a challenge on the ump's call right after it takes place. So each team is issued two challenges to start. And once that challenge is used, they go to the camera. The camera plays an animation that everybody can see, whether on the telecast or on the Jumbotron in the stadium, and shows what the robot saw, whether it was indeed a strike or a ball. Then if the challenge, like basically if the challenge is over, like if the challenge overturns the call, that is a successful challenge, and the team gets to keep that challenge. So theoretically, if you keep making accurate challenges, you never lose your two challenges. But if you challenge and turns out you were wrong, that you shouldn't have challenged the call, you lose that challenge and you only have the two the entire game. Um, that's different from the minor league rule last year. They had three challenges. This is down from three to two. So this will just be an experiment for spring training. In practice, it seems like players and coaches are a little ambivalent about it. They're still trying to figure out whether this is something they really enjoy or not. However, the minor leagues loved it, apparently, like raving reviews about this thing, and like fans liked it too. So maybe by the end of spring training, we'll have an idea about whether the big leaguers feel comfortable with it or not. Um, Real quick, last thing I want to say about it is about that strike zone. So when you see it on the television, that little box on the TV broadcast,
Mhm.
that's the front of the plate. That's basically an estimate of where the ball is crossing the plane of in front of home base. This works differently. They've moved that plane to the middle, closer to where the batter stands. The idea being that it's actually a 3D cube more than it is a flat plane, and they want to treat it that way. So they're brought it in closer just because of that. There's also concern about the height of it. It's a standardized height for this thing. You're probably thinking, but isn't there a wild variation of heights going on? And what
Yes.
about batting stances? What about Anthony Rendon sitting back like he's on a lounger? That means he's a little shorter in stature in his stance than other players. Well, the league is aware of this. Apparently, the official word from the people who created this is that they crunched the numbers and they don't think that there is enough of variance in both player heights and batting stances to adapt it every time. So they just settled on one size fits all.
You know what this means? Bring out the squatting batter.
Yeah, maybe this is what brings weird stances back. Like that would be quite a
Yeah, like for
curveball,
like the
no pun intended.
1940s, 1930s, just the squatting
Right,
stances, the
yeah.
lean back stances,
So we'll see what happens with that.
the
But yeah,
Aaron Judge 7 foot get on my tippy toe stance.
yeah. So this will be the experiment. I saw it used once in the Dodgers game this morning, and it was pretty quick. It was pretty much just like ball comes in to Max Muncy. The catcher doesn't like the call, immediately hits the challenge, ended up being overturned. It was a strike, not a ball, and they got to keep it. It just boom, boom, boom. And that's the idea. It's supposed to not slow down it doesn't slow down the game in any way, like the postseason challenges did, or the other kinds of challenges we see in the modern version of the game.
Mhm.
It's very much just they don't need to ask New York for this one. It's just the camera is there and it tells you immediately. So the feedback loop is more or less instantaneous. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a good idea overall, and it does put more control over those major game-changing ball and strikes calls that people yell at their screen about. It's only a matter of time, I'm sure, until this makes it to the proper regular season.
Right, where the Astros will start banging trash cans if they immediately think, hey, that was a bad call.
Right, right. Or sabotage the robot somehow.
That was a
Anyways.
wild pitch. Wait, no, that was an accurate pitch to the robot.
How like everybody's eyes are just like, wait, that definitely was way over there.
It's just a bit outside.
Anyway,
But yeah, at least like one thing I like, yes, we'll get the right call with the review, but that does mean that we don't get the batter yelling at the umpire, kicking dirt on him, and
Yeah.
possibly getting thrown out from it. Like he's like, no, you're wrong. Give me that robot.
Right. You don't have the manager coming out from the dugout and like being pissed as much as you used to.
Yes, no more throwing chairs, throwing seeds, taking a base and running away with it.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be other things that can rile up your players, but balls and strikes, hopefully, will not be one of them. But again, this will not be in a regular season. So this ends at the end of spring. So you'll be
Oh,
back to
it's going to go to the regular season.
next year, probably not this year. They already said confirmed not in the 2025 regular season.
Yeah, but they also said that about was it pitch clock or was it the uh batting? It was Ghost Runner.
Ghost Runner. But oh
Yes.
yeah, that's supposed to be gone this year, right? I'm
Yep.
pretty sure.
Yep.
Oh, thank God. Thank the heavens. No more Ghost Runner.
Yep. Bye bye Ghost Runner.
But anyway, so yeah, spring training, it started today. It's gonna happen. Your favorite team will be playing soon. Tune in.
I
Yeah,
will.
brief follow-up from last week. The Diamond Sports Group stuff is up. So if you
Yes.
go onto their app, you can pick your region, and baseball teams are on the a la carte now. So I have
Yes.
done that.
That's what I was going to bring up because I saw that the Angels and the Kings were on the
Yes.
same package
So
for
you
20
only
bucks a month. And I'm like,
you only have to pay
yes,
twenty
they
dollars for
did
both
it.
of them.
They
Yes,
finally did
they
it.
did it.
So I get to watch the back half of hockey and the first half of baseball
Yep, there you go.
because that's about when the Angels will just woo, dive off.
Well, there you go. All right,
All right.
that's baseball.
That's baseball. But we still have college players to talk about. So
Yes.
those college players who have yet to graduate, because it's not spring yet, from football, the D League, will be going to the NFL Scouting Combine next week, starting on the 27th through March 2nd. This means we can see if anyone can run faster than Xavier Worthy in the 40-yard dash. This also means we get to see all the fantastic football names as they try to make a name for themselves.
Indeed.
And Unfortunately, there's no like I haven't heard of any like macho players who are going to like skip out on the scouting combine. So unlike last year where we had like Caleb Williams who was like, I don't need to do this. I'm not going to be the first round pick. I don't need to go out and show off for people.
Right.
I don't think we have anyone like that. Maybe Travis Hunter, maybe Shadur Sanders. That's only because Deion Sanders just like being his coach, manager, dad, triple slash threat
Right.
for both of them. But yeah, scouting is next week. And just around the corner as we come to the end of February, it's that time of year again where you get really mad and turn big and red. And I swear we'll get to Captain America soon, but March Madness is around the corner. Selection Sunday is less than a month away on the 16th. But that does mean that here at the Media Boat Podcast, it's March Madness tournament.
Uh, we will have a conversation about that after this podcast is over.
Oh, yes, we will.
Time permitting is what I will say.
Oh,
Time
yes.
permitting.
Lots of time permitting. All right.
Anyway.
But that's it for television.
Yep. That's it for sports. So that means we move on to television news proper. So it's not it for television,
Oh, yeah.
actually.
Yes, no, that's it for sports. I'm sorry. I'm just so used to the past 2 weeks talking only about sports for
Right.
television. I forgot. There's actual television news.
No, yes, there's television news. This time, television news takes us to the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The next Avatar series has been officially greenlit. It's called Avatar Seven Havens, not to be confused with Seventh Heaven. That's something else. The new 2D animated series will consist of 26 half-hour episodes spread across 2 seasons, or books 1 and 2 in classic Avatar style. News of the pickup comes as Last Airbender prepares to celebrate its 20th anniversary, with the original show having debuted back on February 21st, 2005. So that will be tomorrow as of this recording.
Yes, well,
Happy
probably when they'll
20th.
do a bigger announcement, or probably
Yes.
because of the lead up to it.
Yeah. The series, the new series that is set in a quote, world shattered by a devastating cataclysm. A young earthbender discovers she's the new avatar after Korra. But in this dangerous era, that title marks her as humanity's destroyer, not its savior. Hunted by both human and spirit enemies, she and her long lost twin must uncover their mysterious origins and save the Seven Havens before civilization's last strongholds collapse. End quote. There's also an animated film based on Aang and the characters from Last Airbender, due out in theaters next January 2026.
Yep. So we will get that movie, which has already been announced and in development, actually less than a year, January 2026.
Yeah, yeah,
And then, yeah, the next chapter, following in the footsteps of the Book of Korra, is the Earthbender, whoever
yeah,
that may be. Also
right.
dealing with a long lost twin, a la Star Wars influence,
Yeah.
maybe?
It's very cool to see them do a completely new character without any attachments to the existing characters.
Hmm.
It's also cool to see them get a 26 episode order. Nothing gets 26 episodes of anything anymore, so
Yep.
that's cool to see. And yeah, this is good news. I think if you like Avatar, more Avatar is coming. A big and a twist in the plot too, where it's like you don't get that savior chosen one narrative here. You get a big villain anti-hero almost kind of thing happening here, which is fascinating and could lead to some interesting storytelling.
Yeah, it's going to be spread 26 episodes over 2 seasons. That's 52 episodes, full pack of cards here
Yep.
for this upcoming series. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what happened. I'm sure it's going to be part of the alluding narrative of what happened to Korra's death to continue the Avatar cycle. Although I thought it was ended at the end of Korra.
Well, that's the question, right? Then like that's what the question this poses is did it really?
Yeah, did it really? And if the Avatar cycle continues, what does it mean by like the humanity's destroyer? How powerful of an earthbender will this avatar be?
We'll certainly see.
But yeah, exciting new series in the Avatar franchise.
Yep. All right.
But as this gets going, I doubt we'll see it make 50 years. Although
No,
it is
yes.
animated, so technically could live on
Yeah.
for 50 years.
No, very, very few shows, especially ones on network television, last 50 years. But of course, the exception that's been parading its 50 years all over the place this year is Saturday Night Live. Yes, bear with us. We've been talking a lot about Saturday Night Live in the last couple of weeks, but this will probably be the last time we talk about it for a couple of months, I would bet. At least a
Yes.
couple months, maybe longer. Yes, the big 50th anniversary special for Saturday Night Live finally happened on Sunday this past weekend. It was pretty similar to the 40th thing that they had done 10 years ago, where they just blocked out 3 hours, put in a bunch of like new sketches, bringing back old characters. Almost every old cast member you could potentially want to see was there. I say almost. And combined with some brief retrospective segments and just an overall vibe of, man, isn't this crazy that all these people are here at the same time? And yeah, I think it succeeded in doing those things. I think if that's what you wanted from a 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, is a bunch of nostalgia, a bunch of names and faces that you haven't seen in a while, doing some classic characters, then this did deliver on that. As a piece of television, especially a piece of live television, it was sometimes very shoddy, sometimes very happenstance, sometimes very like hastily put together. Definitely felt like there was a lot of technical things happening in the background and things were going wrong. But then again, it wouldn't be Saturday Night Live if it didn't have that on the edge live experience with it. And I guess if that's part of the product, it delivered in that category too. Um, Overall, there's not that much I would say that I absolutely loved about it. I thought the cute thing they did at the beginning, having Sabrina Carpenter, the most recent musical guest, and Paul Simon, the first musical guest, do a duet together, was a neat full circle kind of feeling and a neat moment. And the joke about how when he said he performed that song in 1976, Sabrina Carpenter says, "I wasn't born then, and neither were my parents," which was a really funny line for her to say. Um, and yeah, some of the sketches I was happy to see back. I definitely don't know why they decided to bring back the prison sketch in the year of our Lord 2025. That was a choice. Um
It was
yeah.
because they had SNL cast members must want to plug their movies or their past movies, and that's a very easy way to do it.
Yeah, but like no, I get it. But at the same time, come on, guys. Anyway, yeah, like it felt a lot of people have noted this, and I don't know if I'm wholly on this mind or not. A lot of people noted that there was a sense of finality to it. I mean, why do you get Paul McCartney to do the Abbey Road medley that ends with famously the end,
Mhm.
unless you were trying to say this was the end of something, the end of an era? A lot of people are saying, well, clearly Lauren is done. Clearly, this means end of the 50th. Lauren is retiring and then finally going to hand over the torch. Um, I have my doubts. There's a lot of conversations about like what kinds of kind of sweetheart deals he has with NBC, maybe stuff that only he can do. And does that end when he retires? Say Tina Fey becomes the show, like basically becomes the Lauren Michaels figure and takes over the show. Does she have the same sway with the NBC execs that Lauren did? Can she get the budget to stay the same? There's a lot of very good questions that you should ask about that process. And also, no old white man wants to give of his power in the US anymore. That's not how it works. So I have my doubts about whether, I mean, he's Canadian, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I have my doubts about this being the end of Lawrence's tenure, but if it is, this was quite a note to go out on.
I mean, doing anything for 49 years in any position is quite an accomplishment. Yes, I am counting the 1 year he was gone, or I am first admitting the 1 year he was gone. But SL did hit 50. His child did hit 50 years, so it's it felt a lot like a 50th birthday, and then did like an anniversary where it's yes, bring all the people that you know from your life, everyone who's gone and done better things, come back and celebrate my birthday because you all spawned from me and I made you famous, my little puppets. But yeah, it's I think it was a lot more SNL of past than it was more of a celebration of SNL. That it was like, oh, I mean, you mentioned it like, oh, like all these classic sketches and characters being brought back from, I don't know, probably like more like the last 30 years, I would say, than the whole 50 years. So it's definitely something that I really noticed. Uh, but it was like I had fun watching it at least. Like it was fun watching like all these characters again, but for some reason the one that stuck out to me in the worst way was the Debbie Downer sketch. And not just because Jimmy Fallon was in it, but because the jokes that she said were the repeated jokes from the previous Debbie Downers, and it's like they just shoehorned it in and didn't try to come up with any new material for it. But other than that, it was weird having Lil Wayne as the musical guest with Paul McCartney also, especially since
Yeah,
like we mentioned, they had the SNL concert as well, which
right.
I felt like that would have been like you were to do all the musical guests and not SNL 50, which felt just like an anniversary episode rather than like specifically focusing on the sketches or the cast.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, so
Yeah.
you're a little behind. You've been starting and stopping for me. But what I will say, trying to catch up, is yeah, I also thought the Lil Wayne thing was weird. I agree with you. Like, just put that stuff, silo that away in the concert special, I guess. It felt like we were getting the leftovers, and it was like, why are we doing this on this show? And and yeah, I agree with the Debbie Downer sketch. That's also the vibe I got. Is like you can't just use the classic lines as a crutch here. This is not an original sketch at that point. And what a waste of Al Pacino, or not Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. And like he didn't need to be involved here. But yeah,
Yeah. But like we said on the other side, the SNL 50th concert was also made available. And I did not get a chance to finish watching that, but I did
yeah,
get to my favorite section of the night, which was the Lonely Island medley.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
so
I would just say if somebody out there hasn't watched it, to just watch the medley because that was the best part.
yeah. But yeah, otherwise just it felt like musical guests, musical acts, and nothing. I think it's a couple sketches here and there, but nothing like, oh, must watch TV or must
Right.
NBC must see TV.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, like I said at the top, like I think it did what it was supposed to do. It's just that the more of these they do, it's going to be diminishing returns because the
Mhm.
older the show gets, that means fewer people are going to be able to be part of it. When we get to 60, a lot of these guys are not going to be around. Like, so you have to think about that. Like, at every time, you have to give people a reason to keep believing in the show as a continuous legacy and not just, man, wasn't 75 through 78 great? And they keep relying on that, and it's, yeah, I think it's to these specials detriment. But yeah,
Yeah. All right.
anyway,
Anything else regarding SNL?
no, I think that will put a pin in it for now.
Yep.
The show proper will return. I believe Lady Gaga is going to pull double duty, is what I had read.
Yeah, double duty the second week after the return. It
Yeah,
returns March 1st.
yep. So look forward to that. All right,
Mhm.
any other television that we need to talk about this week?
Um, Still watched all my favorite shows.
Okay.
White Lotus returned this past weekend, but
Yes.
uh did not get to watch it yet.
Okay. Yep. Season three of The White Lotus is up now.
Mhm.
But yes, we'll don't go back to that one when we finish it. But in the
Yes.
meantime, let's move on to cancellations and renewals.
What am I no longer watching?
You're no longer watching Bookie, as it has been canceled on HBO after 2 seasons.
Which means it hit the under.
I guess so. Um, you'll be happy to know that Max has renewed The Pit for a second season.
Yes, get another day in the pit.
Yes, another day in the pit. Christy will be happy to know that um, To All the Boys I Loved Before spinoff XO Kitty will be getting its
Mhm.
third season on Netflix. We're just about to finish. No, we just did finish season 2 of that. She loves that silly show. And then, yeah, I haven't talked about it on here because it's like, whatever. But like, yeah. And then, lastly, in inexplicable renewal news, NBC is bringing back Reba vehicle Happy's Place for a second season.
They're bringing it back because the number two comedy on NBC right now, the number one
Sad.
comedy, St. Dennis Medical.
That makes more sense than this.
Yes. Which does mean that the number three comedy on NBC is still and will always be SNL.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's move out of television and talk about movies. Why don't we? And we always start with the newest, most contentious category in 2025 of the Media Boat podcast, which is the weekend box office numbers. And
Yes.
man, did you pick a number and did you nail the number? And I don't know how you did it, but number one, with a bullet, Captain America Brave New World, $100 million exactly.
100 million and change.
Sure.
for the 4-day weekend. So that's why I gave us
Yes.
half a point each because 3-day weekend it was under by about 12 million, but that
Yeah.
Monday, that Monday number got it to the 100 exact,
So yes,
100 and
yes.
change. So I gave us
You
both the half point, which technically erases the half point that we had there. And
right,
now we're
good,
just at
good.
a flat 4-3 in my favor right now.
That is correct. For now, for now.
Yes.
We'll see what happens in the coming week. But yes, Captain America, of course, it's your number one movie. But right under it, number two, or not right under it because it's way down at $16 million. Some of this was from my wallet. Paddington in Peru made $16 million this week in its debut. US debut, I should say. International is more because it has been out in the UK for 3 months. About.
Yes, it is. Paddington is a British film.
Yes, this. All right, number three, Dog Man, still here with $13 million this week. That's at a cool 70 million. Number four, Hot Eyes with $10 million this week. That's at 22 million. And rounding out your top five, Niza 2 with an $8.3 million debut.
It's the Bollywood film.
It's a Bollywood film. All right, let's look forward to the coming week where we have three movies coming out. First up, we have Cleaner.
This is an action drama thriller starring Daisy Ridley and Clive Owen as cleaners, but not to be confused with The Cleaners or Cleaners, which are both two movies dealing with the exact same premise, but this one is just Cleaner title.
The title is just Cleaner.
Yes.
It is. Uh, we also have The Monkey, which from what I can gather, is a horror movie about those cymbal clapping monkeys.
Yep. I believe this one is from Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions.
Aha. Monkey from a monkey.
Yes.
And then lastly, Old Guy.
I don't know if this one is actually coming out, but this one stars Christoph Waltz and Lucy Liu in a old guy action comedy film.
Sure. Sure. All right. Let's put our bets. So, what do we think our number one is going to be? I think that Captain America will be number one again.
I think it will roll over. I think
Yeah.
you'll see a sharp decline.
Yes.
So, of the 3-day weekend, which was at 88 million,
Hmm.
half of that puts it at 44 million roughly.
Okay.
I'm gonna drop that to maybe a 60% drop then,
Wow.
which
Okay.
puts it down to about 35 million. That's where I want to put the number at right now.
Okay. And what do you want to take?
So if this is gonna get a sharp decline like I think it will be it, I kind of want under 35. I think it's gonna like fall like a rock,
Hmm.
fall like a
Got it.
dud. So we're putting it at 35 million. Do you want over or under?
I'll take over then. I'll take the risk because as much as you're right about like the drop off, and as much as you're right about the word of mouth maybe get spreading like a little bit from the last couple of weeks, I still think that Marvel to a certain extent is still a name that resonates, and I think that people who will have waited for the bigger crowds to dissipate will still go see this. I'm comfortable taking that over.
All right, we'll put it at 35 million on the over for Matt.
All right. Well, a similar blockbuster franchise that usually brought people to theaters, James Bond, is entering a new phase of its franchise's existence. News hit this morning about the future of the James Bond franchise. The longtime producers and custodians of 007, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, will be
Broccoli.
stepping back. What?
It's broccoli.
What?
Yeah, that's right. It's broccoli. The broccolis.
I was like, you're kidding. Then no, it's definitely like the food. Broccoli. You're a broccoli. Anyway, we'll be stepping back from the IP, leaving current owner Amazon MGM Studios to take creative control. As per details of the historic agreement, the three parties will remain co owners of the iconic franchise, but Amazon MGM will have creative control. Michael Wilson commented, quote, "With my 007 career spanning nearly 60 incredible years, I am stepping back from producing the James Bond films to focus on art and charitable projects. Therefore, Barbara and I agree it's time for our trusted partner, Amazon MGM Studios, to lead James Bond into the future." End quote. Back in 2022, just as a refresher, Amazon bought MGM for $8.5 billion, and No Time to Die, the 25th James Bond film and Daniel Craig's fifth and supposedly final turn as 007, was released in 2021, earning $775 million. So there's a lot to discuss here. You could see this as a continuation of a trend that is more corporate overlords taking over these individual kind of franchise shepherds and creating more of a corporate vibe to these big franchises. You could also think of this as kind of a backstab in a way, because as recently as like last month, there were quotes from these two about what they didn't want Amazon and MGM to do to James Bond and how they wanted to, as long as they had creative control, they wanted to avoid it being franchised a billion ways and showing up in streaming and all that stuff. So to see such a quick about face is suspicious, to say the least. Um, yeah, and also there's a little bit of a layer of sad vibes here about like maybe it not having that like private, like that homespun, if you will, kind of private vision and focus for the legacy of James Bond, and feeling that it could be at risk now to be something it was never intended to be. But
It's a British IP through and through, all the
mm,
books and all the films, becoming an Americanized next day delivery product. And
yeah,
that was this is the whole not the whole enchilada, but the biggest worry when it was news that Amazon was going to buy MGM, that
yes,
there goes the purity, however much pure James Bond is as a character in 2025 or 2022 at the time.
yeah,
Uh, there goes the dilution of the James Bond IP that they will spin off as many different ways into making a product, into making the $8.5 billion back. Because
yeah,
you spent 8.5 billion in 2022. Here we are 3 years later, and you've yet to make anything James Bond related as an Amazon studio to make any type of money from James Bond back. Yes, they have the whole entire catalog on the streaming. Yes, there's other properties in MGM, but James Bond is the big whale. It's the big catch. It's the one that brought
hmm
$775 million to a single film.
yeah. I mean, we don't have time to really probably talk as much about this as we want to, but yeah,
Yeah,
this definitely
stupid
puts into
Microsoft.
right. But yeah, it definitely makes you think about like, well, yeah, what what they could now get away with the Bond franchise, whether we an Amazon series spinoff, whether we are going to get a quick slapdash new James Bond movie with some guy we've never heard of just to get one out the door. Like, there's a lot of now what ifs that are now becoming realities. But ultimately, we'll see. Ultimately, it's up to Amazon now.
If one of the early rumors from Amazon buying this is to be believed, if they wanted to turn it into an MCU type expansion where you're going to get a Q project, a Moneypenny project, an M project, a young James Bond project, and throw them all together, mix them all together into a single, leading up to a single James Bond film.
Yeah, I
And
hope not.
overloading. I mean, just look at what they did with Lord of the Rings for 2 seasons and a third coming up.
Yeah. I hope not, but ultimately, yes, the gates are open, and they can now they have freedom to do all this sort of stuff, and fingers crossed that it isn't super terrible, but chances are some of it will be.
Yes.
Anyway, on that
Anyways,
note,
we actually watched some movies.
Yeah, we watched some movies. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of time to get into them. But I'll start just really briefly with what I saw because I will say maybe two sentences about it. We saw Paddington in Peru, the aforementioned British film series about that cute bear who loves marmalade sandwiches. If you've seen the first two Paddington movies, well, one, you know that they're some of the best family movies to come out in the last decade. I wholeheartedly recommend them if you have not seen them. They are fantastic, whimsical, funny movies in every possible way. Absolute classics, both one and two. Three, less so, but not to that crazy of an extent. It's still a very, very good movie. It's still very funny. It still has like very wonderful moments of like fun whimsy and adventure. I will say it does when it gets into the adventure through kind of Indiana Jones-esque stuff, it not as good. And a lot of that stuff feels a little bit like the movie stretching, especially towards kind of the middle. Um, but by the end of it, it still has that emotional heart that you want from a Paddington movie. Uh, all the actors are just as charming as ever, especially on her A game Olivia Colman, who is just the funniest thing in this movie. But yeah, it's a fun time, a great family movie. So if you like those first two, absolutely go check out Paddington in Peru.
Well, I'm glad you had a fun time at the movies.
Oh no.
All right. Well, one of these I saw in the movie theater, one I was watching at home. Let's start with the Apple TV Plus film, The Gorge, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and a mustacheless Miles Teller. I had some hopes for this film. I was like, okay, you have me intrigued with these two characters who are on the opposite sides of the gorge, who cannot talk to each other, but they have to defend what's in beneath, what's in the gorge. And I thought, okay, that's a cool premise. If that was the premise, I would have liked this probably a lot more than what they actually got. Because at every single turn, I guessed what was coming next, because this is about as basic as an ass script of an ass movie as you can make out of an ass budget. Just rattle off the typical cliches in a action sci-fi romance movie.
Yeah.
Do your leads like have to meet and kiss? Yes. Do they fall into the gorge? Yes. Is it run by a shadowy government? Yes. Are they fighting the undead? Yes. Do they have to blow it up at the end? Yes. There's your movie. Nothing about this feels original, even though I looked it up. It was like, this has to be based off a book or something. No. Apparently, it's in an original script, but based off video game elements. And maybe that's where I'm getting a lot of this from.
Maybe.
But this is about as basic of an ass movie as you can get. If you have no concept of like what a good movie is, you might have a good time with this. But having like guessed everything that was going to come out like next, it was like, oh, I know what the twist is. I know where you're going next. I know exactly what's going to happen before you even say it, before you even comes out of your mouth. I know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know if that means I've seen way too many movies or if this is just a bad script overall.
Both can be true.
Both can be true. And yeah, don't do what I did and fall into the pit that is the gorge. Instead, just go watch the pit and you have a better time at the pit.
There you go.
But yeah, don't spend your time with the gorge. Don't do what I did. I have a much longer write up that you can find on mediaboatpodcast.com. But just don't do what I did.
Okay, I won't.
But that does bring me to the next movie, Captain America: New World Order.
No, that's not what
Or
it's
that's what
called.
it was called before everyone decided to change it to Captain America: Brave New World.
Yes.
All right. Now, let me set this up for you. Sam Wilson is Captain America. Sam Wilson is not a super soldier, but the government has developed a new super soldier serum and they want Sam Wilson to take it. But because of his events in Captain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and learning from the previous Black Captain America, he doesn't want to take it because he feels like he's just being experimented on by the government. So he is now it, but he kind of needs to take it if he's going to take on superhero threats because he's not Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers had superhero strength and superhero serum. Sam Wilson does not. don't you think that you as Captain America need a superhero serum to like stand up to everyone?
To do Captain America shit? Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think he'd want to do that, right? Or you think he'd need to do that. So that's his internal struggle through the entire film is do I do I succumb to the government of yes, I need to be the superhero, or can I be a superhero without taking a super soldier serum? But then a great catastrophe of the Red Hulk emerges because Sam Wilson refuses to take the serum. So General Thunderbolt Ross says, "Give me the damn serum." And he injects it with him. And instead of being a super soldier, he becomes the Red Hulk. Now, it's Captain America, the normal everyday guy, zero superpowers, versus the Red Hulk, a super monster rampaging through the city. Can Captain America stop him? Like an everyday normal guy stop this rampaging Hulk? That sounds like a good movie, right? Because that's probably what the first draft of
Yeah.
the script was. And then it got torn to bits and reworked and reshredded, and not the movie we ended up with.
Yeah.
Ugh, there's so much hope for this. I could see where I'm pretty sure what I just pitched was the original pitch for this movie. But then Marvel had said, oh, but wait, we need to add the celestial body that because we need to wrap up that loose end because we're not going to wrap it up in the next couple of films. We need to include all the Hulk stuff, more Hulk stuff. You're going to have Red Hulk. Let's include more people from the Hulk from 20 years ago because people still remember that. We have some loose ends there that we want to tie up. And you're gonna be a Captain America movie? Let's make this more of a espionage movie like a Captain America Winter Soldier, because everyone loved that movie. And ultimately it feels like this movie got so many movie notes and editing notes that it's not the movie that they intended to make. And I can see all the edits in here. Giancarlo Esposito does not need to be in this thing. He is totally wasted in this thing. Uh, Harrison Ford, I understand why they got him because William Hurt died, but damn, do I not believe any of his anger in anything? He's
Yeah.
there as a name only and just being grumpy instead of angry, and I couldn't stand it. If you watch any of the trailers, you already know what's going to happen. It's going to be a fine movie. The actual like action set pieces are pretty good, or at least like standard to like a Marvel film. But all in between leading up to them is dragging and boring and not engaging for a Captain America film.
Yeah, no, yeah, that lines up to pretty much what everybody's been saying about this thing, which is just seems like it was not focus grouped, but like boarded to like Disney and Marvel Studios boarded to death. Like they were just like,
Mhm.
well, we want it to be all these things, and we want it to be the big comeback movie for Marvel. People love Captain America. They'll come back to theaters for Captain America, right? As long as we check all these check marks. The only thing is that when you do movie design based on check marks, is you lose the reason why you're making the movie in the first place.
Yep, and it
And
definitely
that
felt like
seems
the
to be,
heart got sucked out of this.
yeah, that if you don't have that
But
heart,
like I said, there was
yeah,
definitely something in here that could have been what I like resembled like what I said, what I
yeah.
just pitched here. Like
I
it's
mean,
there. All the lines or thoughts are right
yeah,
there. They just took it out and tweaked it so much where it's like, well, if we do
yeah,
this, that means we have to get rid of this. But like
right.
you just keep picking, and the heart of your movie just slowly shrivels up.
And that's the thing is it's happening to a lot of stuff with Disney right now. I mean, remember the thing like, oh shoot, breaking news. 52 minutes ago, Major League Baseball and ESPN have mutually agreed to end their national television deal after the 2025 season.
Oh, that's next year's problems.
Sorry, anyways, back to, I guess that's technically Disney. So I'm not
Yes.
really to make you too crazy of a segue here. No, but anyway, real quick, it reminds me of this stuff like they're just like across the board seem like studio by committee at this point. Like that Pixar series that just debuted on Disney Plus, the whole debacle about removing the episode with the trans character.
Mhm.
Like I don't care because that happened. Now I don't care to watch that show at all. And I was really excited for that show prior to this prior to that
I
happening.
forgot that debuted this past week.
Right? That's the thing, is that this is what speaking of people walking on themselves, like I said about Phil Spencer earlier, Disney does not realize that there is things we like to see. We want to see Captain America movies. We want to see these characters on screen, but they're compromised by committee decision making and by corporate thinking. And we're not getting the things that the fans actually would love to see and bring in droves. And so, like, I don't know. It just seems like a company that just keeps hitting themselves in the head.
Yeah, I don't know what they plan to do, but like this was their last Earthbound hero movie before we
Yeah.
get into uh Fantastic Four, before we get into Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday real soon.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a whole lot of like actual Marvel projects between now and the eventual like all coming together movies. So
Yeah.
like this was supposed to be the one following Deadpool Wolverine from last year to bring people back to the theaters, to get people excited for the end, the new end phase of this saga. And this didn't do it.
No, this wasn't it.
No, it felt like they wanted to tie up some loose ends and ended up just tying themselves in a knot. Just couldn't do it.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
All right.
Well, a little bit over, but that'll do it
That's
for
okay.
us. Not
That
too
will do
bad.
it for this the issue. Well, we're a magazine now. This
Yeah, we
episode
are.
of the Media Boat Podcast. Thank you everybody for listening and or watching. If you want to watch and or listen, here are the places you can do that. You can go to YouTube and search Media Boat Podcast to find our YouTube channel. You can watch our archive of shows there, as well as clips in the clip playlist that shorten the segments in bite-sized pieces for you. You can also listen to us in podcast form. Those are available on podcast services all over the place. Just search Media Boat Podcast and you'll find us. You can also find us on the web. MediaBoatPodcast.com is where you can find a visual archive of our shows, as well as write ups about our thoughts about new releases. You said you have one coming for, is it just the Gorge, or do you have one for Captain America as
I've
well?
got them both in there waiting to go up.
Okay, so now that I know that those are there, I will do that.
Mhm.
So those will be up soon. So look forward to that. You can also find us on social media platforms like Blue Sky. Just search Media Boat Podcast there. And last but definitely not least, if you want to email us your questions, comments, your feedback about the show, anything you want answered by us, you can email us at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. We will read those emails here on the show. So that'll do it for this week. We'll be back next week for our final show of February before we get into the crazy month of March. That will be our Oscar predictions show. So we will lock in our Oscar predictions between the 27th and the 28th for the show next week. So look forward to that and a bunch of other stuff I'm sure that we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll have our SAG Award winners from this upcoming weekend, which will help us hopefully maybe determine our best picture. We don't know. Actual
Maybe.
best picture voting ended 2 days ago as of this
Yeah.
recording, so the actual vote is locked in. But we get to see what the SAG Awards did, because typically, whoever wins Best Ensemble will go on to win Best Picture.
Even though that hasn't always been
Typically,
true. Yeah.
yes.
We'll see.
But yeah, we'll be back next week with more news, more thoughts. Oscar show preview next week. All right, bye.
Bye.